Na podcast zaprasza lektornia.com.
Hello there, my name is Cezary, this is Lucas. Hey Lucas.
Hi guys.
We are Polish MMA officials, judges and referees, and this is our YouTube channel, Rules Meeting MMA Podcast. And we are from Poland, but some of our guests are not from Poland, and this is for you. I mean, all people that don't speak Polish. So we all speak English in our conversations with our guests from all over the world, officials like us, and not only officials, but there's people working with MMA. So let us welcome you on our channel and have a good day and watch us.
See you soon. Enjoy.
Welcome in another episode of Rules Meeting MMA Podcast. Today's guest is Kleynjans from Australia. Hi, Greg.
Hello, mate.
We met for the first time. We met 2 years ago in February in Dubai. I don't know if you remember that. It was during the ACB event.
Yes.
We shared the room actually in hotel.
Correct.
Yeah, I had a broken collarbone.
Correct.
Yeah. You're our guest because you're a referee, MMA referee, and a judge. I don't know if you ever reffed any other sports, like combat sports.
No.
No.
Combat sports?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've done some kickboxing, some boxing.
Okay.
Jiu-jitsu.
And obviously you're still active as a judge or a referee, yeah?
Yes, very much.
So what was the beginning of your involvement with in combat sports? When you were a teenager, were you interested of any sports, like any kind?
Yeah. As a kid, from the age of 9 years old, I played Australian rules football, which I know you're a fan of.
Yeah.
And there's a fair bit of contact in Australian rules football. It's a pretty tough sport, which I loved. And I played that right through until I was 32 years old.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah. And I made money, like I got paid to play since I was 16 years old. So I always was lucky enough to get paid to play a sport that I was passionate about. But at the same time, later as a teenager, I started training in martial arts as well. So the big thing that hit our suburb when we were kids was Zendu Kai, Bob Jones' Zendu Kai. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that over where you are. But that came through, so we all started on that. And they started handing out belts very, very quickly.
Okay.
Doesn't matter if we're very good or not very good. And then I just got interested in boxing. So I just started to do some boxing. There was some local boxing around, and I boxed for quite a few years. And then I was making enough money in football to travel and live off. So I stopped doing martial arts for a few years and just concentrated on my football. And then some years back after that, I got involved in Wing Chun.
Okay.
I went through the whole series of Wing Chun and went to Hong Kong and did my gradings and stuff like that. And through there, I met guys who got out of the traditional system and wanted to work on just what works in the street. They were not interested so much in sport, MMA anymore. And by this stage, I'd finished football and I'd been working security for many years on doors. I'm a skinny dude, so you have to be able to, I'm only small, like you. Yeah. So you're working on front doors. You have to have some tricks. And a couple of the guys ventured off into, when it first came to Australia, they had Krav Maga. You know Krav Maga?
Yeah, of course. It's Israeli combat system, yeah?
Yeah. So they came to Australia and looked for some guys to start up this Krav Maga, and I was one of the first guys to get involved with that. So I went through the series of training with that until I became an instructor and with a Krav Maga school for many years. At the same time there, I was doing some jiu-jitsu as well.
Brazilian jiu-jitsu or just sport jiu-jitsu?
Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
And all through that too, also doing Muay Thai and boxing and whatever else. So I guess I've done a lot of martial arts my whole life and still train today, but I would say I'm a master of none of them. I just like training. I just like to
I understand. Yeah. And when you said about this, let's say, boxing adventure, Well, we're talking 80s or 90s?
Would have been 80s and 90s, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So around 30 years ago, yeah?
Yeah. I'm old.
Okay. Do you remember? Do you remember your first, impression about MMA and the first time you saw professional MMA fights?
Yes, I do remember it. And it came through on a couple of channels, like a cable channel somewhere that I saw some on. And to get more information, I ended up sending to buy the DVDs, and I would wait, and they would only have the UFCs. They would only have, I think, about 4 events a year, maybe 6 a year initially. So they would package up 2 or 3 of them, and then they would send them over to me, and I'd have to go down to the airport and pick up my DVDs and watch those. Before then, though, I was buying videos, illegal videos from Lumpini Stadium for the Muay Thai first. So I was waiting for them to come in, and then I started collecting the UFC ones.
What were your thoughts about MMA when you saw the guys from different sports, etc.?
I thought it was the ultimate test, and because I'd played around with so many martial arts myself, I thought it was a good test to see how different martial arts stood up against each other. Of course, it's evolved today, and it's now a complete game. But initially, it wasn't like that. So it was really interesting to see how that worked.
Were you surprised that in the beginning of MMA, especially in US, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was, it was a thing? Was it a surprise for you?
I was a bit surprised. They shot for takedowns early, and they finished, and they were allowed to wear their gis, of course. So there was lots of cloth chokes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I was very surprised, and that got everybody interested in jiu-jitsu. So they said, we have to learn jiu-jitsu as well now, because if it goes to the ground. It changed a little bit, though, when they said they couldn't wear the gis anymore.
Yeah.
And the wrestlers got involved, and quite quickly, good American wrestlers and Russian wrestlers could start to nullify the jiu-jitsu guys. So everybody had to evolve, that's I think what I loved the most about the sport was that you had to evolve. If you didn't evolve and change with the sport, you got left behind. So I really liked that. I really like that about MMA.
Yeah, actually, I can see that when there's a fighter, when for example, he's injured or something, like for 2 or 3 years, it's a long time now, and everybody's moving, forward, and he stopped like right there. And when he's coming back, in mostly cases, he's losing the fight. I noticed that. I don't know if you agree with me.
I agree. I think that the sport evolves so quickly that if you don't move with it, you're going to get lost behind.
How would you rank MMA now as with other sports in Australia? Is it popular like more than basketball, for example, or what's the most popular sport?
Well, Australian rules football is the most popular. That's a huge market. And then we also play rugby league in some states, so it's also very popular. Basketball, not so popular. And soccer, what you guys call football, starting to get popular. And I think MMA now has kind of become mainstream. So there's a lot of people know about MMA. I'm not sure they understand MMA.
Okay.
So,
how often you can see MMA events? Because in Poland, when in normal conditions we got 2 or 3. Sometimes we got 2 or 3 events in one day, and we got every weekend we have in Poland we have MMA events, smaller or bigger, but every weekend.
Yeah. No, we're a long way from that in Australia. A long way from it.
Okay.
And the local events, you can see some on pay-per-views, but then they don't have a big following. Not a big following. There might be, depending on the event, 2,000 or 3,000 people. Sometimes more. Yeah.
So you live in Melbourne, yeah?
I live in Melbourne, yeah.
You're born and raised?
Born and raised.
Bread and butter. Yeah, but so where do you work as a referee or judge? Like out of Australia? Mostly?
Yeah, I work all over the world. I'm very lucky. For the last 4 years, I've worked every month, and some more than 12 times a year, I do a show in China, and then I do whatever shows around that. So whether it's been ACA or ACB and UFCs or quite a few other shows around the world, and then I have the local circuit as well. So
how it looks like in China. I mean, how big is the audience during the event, etc.
It's funny. Some shows are because the show that I generally work for is made for TV, so it's in a TV station and it's done to look really, really professional. But the crowd's small. They make their money on TV advertising. But every now and then they'll take that show outside of the studio to a small or to a city somewhere and put on a live show, and they'll get a big crowd. They'll get 10,000, 15,000 people.
Okay, so what are the locations of those events? I mean, the cities. I don't know any Chinese city, but I'm sure you do.
Yeah. So certainly the UFCs are mainly done in the bigger cities, the Beijings or the biggest cities, or Shanghai's. But the show we do, the television station is a city called Zhongzhou.
Okay.
And half the people in China have never heard of it, but there's probably 10 million people in Zhongzhou. It's one.
Okay.
That's just what China's like. And then we've done quite a few outside from there. So Guangzhou is quite a big city. It's the landing port in China. It's sort of taking over from Beijing and Shanghai. Done shows there. I've done a couple of shows up in Tibet, up in the plains in Tibet. Done 3 shows.
Oh.
Yeah. Done shows in Chengdu and Shenzhen, and I did the Ultimate Fighter, the Tough House. They did one in China many years ago, maybe 5 years ago now, maybe even 6 years ago, and they did that in a city called Kleynjans, and that was quite far north. Quite close to the point of North Korea and Russia up the top there.
Okay.
So,
speaking about those events in Tibet, have you felt any difference about the heights?
Absolutely, yeah. So the one I did one at 3,600 meters. That's the highest I'd ever been at, and they flew in 22 international fighters, and 21 of them were out in the first round. Oh,
okay.
That was an outside event in a big field, and they had archers, those Tibetan archers, and it was just an incredible experience. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely loved it.
How long you're staying? When you're leaving Australia to go, to work, how long you're out of country?
3 nights.
3 nights.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just in and out.
So, for example, if you're traveling to Europe, it's a hell of a trip for you, yeah?
Yeah. It takes a long time. Yeah.
So the easiest way is I think it's go first to Dubai and then to Moscow or whatever, yeah?
Generally go through Dubai. Sometimes go through Singapore, or sometimes you may go through China. But
Are there any direct flights for example, from London to any Australian city?
No, that's too far.
Okay.
You can't get. I don't think there's enough fuel in the planes.
Okay, it would take like 20 hours, yeah.
Yeah, I think the longest flight you can do is they can now get to Dallas in America, and that takes 17 hours direct.
Okay. You said and I know that you worked for UFC.
Yes.
Do you remember your first UFC event? Was it in Australia or elsewhere?
It was Australia. It was in Sydney. It was UFC 110. The main event was, I think, Nagaro and Frank Mir. Yeah. Wanderlei Silva was on the card. Michael Bisping was on the card. Keith Jardine was on the card. I'd have to go through and find out, but it was pretty big news for Australia back then. It was 10 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm correct, but there was this huge event in Australia on the stadium, yeah?
The biggest crowd they've ever had?
Yeah.
Holly Holm and Ronda Rousey.
Yeah. The big upset. Were you working there on this event?
I worked on that show. I was refereeing.
As a referee or judge?
As a referee.
Okay, so like, do you more judging or refereeing?
Mostly referee, but I actually really like judging. And as you know, I teach the judging part of the course for Herb Dean. But yeah, I don't mind what I do. Refereeing, judging.
Okay.
Would
you agree that if you want to be a good judge, it's easier to be a good if you want to be a good referee, it's easier to be a good MMA referee when you have any backup in martial arts, like as a practitioner?
I think you need to understand. You need to understand martial arts. You don't have to have been a competent competitor. It's handy if you have competed. But it doesn't mean the best fighter is going to be the best official, because our job as an official is to understand rules. What you also need to understand as a judge and a referee, equally as important, is what's going on and what that feels like. You need to understand that sort of stuff. Now, if you've never been put in that position, it's very tough for you to judge it. Refereeing is a bit different, but they're very, very different jobs, very different roles.
Yeah. And I got another question. Lately, the whole bare knuckle fighting is getting more popular.
Very.
Yeah. In Poland, we had last weekend, a week ago, we had a MMA bare knuckle tournament.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Next week we have bare knuckle boxing, and in some few weeks we're gonna have bare knuckle K1 fights.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's getting very, very popular.
This season, are they having crowds in these shows at the moment?
At the moment now, no, because everything is in the TV studios.
Okay, all right, yeah.
And it's all pay-per-viewed. So, but I think they are satisfied of the numbers,
Yeah, good.
But I can tell you one thing: that it was a tournament, no weight categories, and there was a guy who got into it just the day before, and he won the whole tournament. He won 3 fights in one evening, and he's a professional MMA fighter.
Right.
Around 100 kilograms, and all other guys are not professional fighters. So he just used his jiu-jitsu and grappling skills and won 3 fights, and it was like around because the only person who gets the money for being in this tournament is the winner.
Right.
Everybody else is going with nothing. So he got like around $13,000 American dollars.
Wow. Do they not have a commission?
No. It's it's just no judges.
No judges.
No judges, just the referee. And it looks like a little bit like. Do you remember the movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme, The Quest? There, the arena is very, very similar because they can fall down actually, and it happened a few times.
Oh no!
Fall off the arena. So it was this, second event. So they're still learning. But actually for me it would be better with Vale Tudo rules. Soccer kicks, stomp, etc. Because the rules are that they can headbutt, but only in the stand-up fighting. No headbutts on the ground. Oh. No knees to the hand on the ground. No soccer kicks, no stomps, etc. From my point of view, if you don't have a cage, because there's no cage, no judges, so it looks very rough. So you want to go rough, go all the way. I mean, sorry for my dog. Go all the way, and let's do the Brazilian Vale Tudo rules, yeah? Everything goes. Bare knuckles, elbows, headbutts, soccer kicks, everything.
So how do you win this fight if it goes the distance?
It's something like after 25 minutes of straight fighting, you can push, your opponent out like in sumo.
Yes.
And when he's out of the circle, it's over.
Right.
But it's after 25 minutes, so I can send you some. I'll send you some. Some links to videos. So you'll see some fights.
I'd like to see.
It's very funny.
What I like about MMA, I like rules and regulations. I like that we have systems in place to make it safe. I like the fact we're turning it into a really good sport, a really exciting sport, and hopefully, possibly one day an Olympic sport. We want it to be.
Yeah, one day maybe. Yeah.
So as much as these things may be a bit fun, I don't know if it's that fun if you're an amateur guy and you go in against a pro MMA guy and beats you up and he takes all the money. I don't know how much fun that is for the poor amateur guy. So the reason we have rules and regulations is to make it safer, and that's why I like rules and regulations. I think they need to happen.
Yeah,
we don't need any unnecessary damage.
But when you say this, I think that if our goal as MMA environment, if our goal is to put MMA into Olympics, and there's bare knuckle fights will get more and more popular, and we will separate this. We will show to the commissioners from Olympic, etc. that look, this is MMA, this is safe.
Yeah.
And the new thing is bare knuckles. It's not safe. It's not sports, etc., etc. Just it's entertainment.
Oh, look, I don't mind the bare knuckles things. Because UFC never used to have gloves either. It started.
Yeah.
So I don't mind that. But I like to have judges that judge you on your ability, not your ability to stand up for 25 minutes and then push someone over. I don't think that's. I want judges to be able to understand the sport and judge it accordingly and say his techniques were fantastic. He had him threatened, throughout the fight. Therefore, I think, along with all our other criteria, therefore, I feel this guy was the better fighter on the night. That's why we have these judges. It's the fairest way.
Yeah, I agree with you, yeah.
As for bare knuckles, I don't mind the bare knuckles. That's okay.
Yeah, but I wanted to ask this some boxing coaches, but maybe I will. Do you think how big is the difference when you're preparing your fighter as his coach, his trainer? How different is to prepare him for fighting with bare knuckles? I mean, just straight boxing. Do you think that there are different angles, different punches, different footwork?
Absolutely, and I think it would be really hard to train because you can't train bare knuckles.
It's
very hard to find some sparring partners for bare knuckles. So I think angles would certainly change a little. I mean, your hand goes to half the size, doesn't it?
Yeah.
16-ounce boxing glove, so it goes to half the size. So I think your hands would be a little lighter, so you'd probably be able to keep them up for a lot longer. I don't know how the coaches would deal with their fighters in regards to that, but they'd be a breed of their own, I would imagine.
Yeah, but I just want to do it like for me. I want to find some solid boxing coach here in Poland, and talk with him about it. Actually, we got some coaches that had Olympic fighters, Olympic medalists still, so maybe I'll do it. But coming back, to your life with MMA. I know you do other things for a living than that judging and refereeing, and it's MMA is somewhere in this thing.
Yeah, well, obviously I still coach. I coach MMA. I coach still at a gym. Unfortunately, we can't go in there at the moment because of the situation around the world. But I am fortunate enough that because I work for a professional football club, the government has just granted us a license to go in and train. So we started training 2 weeks ago. It's in a bit of a hub situation, whereas I have to go there. I get tested twice a week. We have to go to a special testing. And then every morning we turn up at the football club. We have to wait in our cars. We get a text. We walk in. We get a temperature test. We get assessed by the doctor. And then we can go and train. And then when I come home, I'm not allowed to have any visitors to the house. I can't go apart from essential. So we're not very much in lockdown in Australia at all, but anyone involved in the football hub is, because our sports haven't opened up, but they've granted pro footballers this opportunity. So my job in there, if that's what you're asking, is that I'm the boxing, grappling and tackling coach. But because they've only, excuse me, mate, there's a kid running in the background.
Yeah.
A bit like your dog. Because they've only let a limited amount of people into the football club as staff. They've allowed 25 staff, and that includes head coach, doctors, physios, everyone. And this is a big club. Would employ hundreds of people. My job has changed somewhat, so I'm doing bits of everything, lots of everything in it, and I'm enjoying it. It's great fun, and it's great to be out working, doing stuff. So we're going to play our first game on the 11th of this month to no crowds. So it's going to be interesting.
No crowds.
No crowds. Yeah.
Okay. Please tell me, like, what elements of of combat you're putting into your program for the footballers?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's hard, if you don't understand Australian rules football, it's a cross between rugby, soccer, rugby union, MMA.
Yeah.
So what I bring mostly for them, and first and foremost, we have some cross training. So in the cross training, we just do boxing, we do some light grappling, and we're allowed to tackle from all angles in AFL. So I take elements of our grappling and put into their tackling. But the big thing I take from it is stance and posture and ability to move and turn in tight spaces. So a lot of the boxing footwork we take into there, and then a lot of just grinding and from wrestling and on the ground. So just putting you in uncomfortable positions and making you think your way out of it. You can't punch, kick, or submit anyone in a game of football, but certainly being able to move in bad positions and recover, or go to the ground and get up while their hands are still free, so you can use them to either drag someone else down or dispose of the ball. So elements like that.
So for how long you're working with the team?
This is now my 4th season. Yeah.
So the season is like in summer, yes? The summer of the season, or?
No, it's a winter sport. So it started.
Winter sport, okay.
It started in March. We had one game, and then they shut the whole season down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's been shut down since then, and we opened again on June 11. But it's a huge, there'll be 100,000 people turn up to a game. It's a huge game. Yeah, and I'm blessed that I work at the biggest club in the country. And we're last year's champions, so I'm really lucky. I'm involved with an incredible team.
Yeah, congratulations, by the way.
The next time I see you, I must bring you over a Richmond Tigers memento.
Yeah, thank you very much. Like as you said before, and maybe I said it also. Nowadays, mostly, most MMA events are in TV studios. Like, for example, UFC is now this weekend is in Las Vegas in the Epic Center, or whatever they call it. Do you think that because in Poland, situation is like everybody's hungry, the viewers are hungry to watch any event.
Yeah.
So the pay-per-views the numbers are, I think, are very good.
Yeah.
Do you think that because I thought that about when the situation is gonna, getting better and better, etc. But maybe it's a better way for the promoters to get more money from the pay-per-views, and maybe they were gonna stay in studios, or you think they're gonna go back to the big arenas with the crowd?
Personally, I think it's. I mean, I love the sport, but I think it adds a lot to have a crowd. It just changes the sport straight away. And for the average, this is where we spoke about the mainstream being accepting of that sport. They accept it as a crowd because if they don't fully understand it, they're part of the crowd. Now, if you have to just watch this to understand it, I don't know if they're going to like it as much anymore. I know that sounds a bit crazy.
Yeah.
But I watched the first round of AFL football over here, take it the other way, and there would normally have been, say, 80,000 people in the stadium. There was no one, and it just felt, I don't know, it just didn't feel right. You just didn't get excited about the sport like you once would. So I'm hoping promoters don't think like that. I'm hoping they want to include the crowd, and I'm sure the fighters love it with the crowd as opposed to in an empty room. So I'm hoping it goes back. I really want it to go back to what it was. I don't think the atmosphere for MMA in a huge stadium is as good as a small stadium or a mid-sized stadium. I mean, in Poland, with some of your events, you have 50,000 people turn up.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. We had one. We had one event with 58,000 people on this football stadium. I mean, soccer stadium. But I mean, most events is between 4,000 and 5,000 people watching live.
I've been lucky enough in the with the UFC. I've done their biggest one, which was 50, I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4,000, whatever it was. At it's now called Marvel Stadium. I don't know what it was back then. So I was lucky enough that I was involved in that one, but it's not my favourite one because the atmosphere just didn't feel. Whereas I've done smaller ones. I think my favourite's been in Korea, where it was in a smaller place and they were just hungry and excited. And the Philippines, I did one show in the Philippines for the UFC, and they were so pumped up and excited. I just felt good. Yeah, I don't think if you're sitting up the back of a stadium, I don't know how much.
I know.
You and I are lucky. If we're watching MMA, we're usually a metre from the cage. Even if we're not out time to referee or judge, we're maybe 2 metres from the cage. So we're very lucky. But if I had to sit in row 200, maybe I wouldn't enjoy it so much. I'd just go home and watch it on TV.
And tell me, please. I know maybe what you're going to answer, but is there any difference for you when you're walking inside the cage? Is there any crowd around or not?
No, you just tune in. I don't think it matters. In actual fact, the week after I did that big show at Marvel Stadium, the 50, and the Holly Holmes Ronda Rousey one. Yeah. The following weekend, I did an amateur show in a tiny little bar in Frankston here, like a suburb out here in Melbourne. And once the door locks, it's red versus blue. You just got to do the same job. So, it doesn't really matter. It really doesn't matter.
I know. I'm just asking because our viewers, our YouTube viewers, they might not have, this knowledge because they never were inside the cage or as a fighter or a judge or, a referee or any other way. So, I just want to let them know how it feels like to be inside. When I'm inside the cage, there's nothing else that the fighters and me. I just, I can't see anything. Yeah. It's just, black around. Maybe. I hope we're gonna come back to this, regular events, MMA events. So you said it's a little bit different situation in Australia with this lockdown, but you think when you can work with MMA event in Australia?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have no idea. If gyms can't open, if we can't go and get on a jiu-jitsu mat at the moment, it's not looking good for months, I wouldn't think. And then you've got to ask the question, are promoters going to take the risk and put a live show on? Yeah. Because our crowd's going to go, I'm not sure I want to sit in a crowded room and watch a show. And then the promoter's going to say, well, if I don't sell every ticket, I'm not going to make any money. So are they going to take that risk to put the show on? So things like that. So what may happen in Australia is that the amateur scene might start first.
Okay.
It's a less risk for the promoter.
Yeah.
So that may stay first, which is interesting to see. And the other interesting thing about that is, and I think that may happen because I was just asked by the Victorian government here, that I live in Melbourne, it's the state of Victoria, and they've just asked me to rewrite the amateur rules for MMA.
Oh. Okay.
So maybe they're looking to put more time and energy into the amateurs.
Okay. And you said, and I know that you worked a lot in China. What's the situation in China look like with that?
In regards to body, or they're working shows in China now. They had a show last Saturday, but there's no foreign. You can't fly in.
Okay.
So I can't go in there. If I did get in there, I'd never be able to get out, or I'd never be able to come back here. They have used no foreign fighters in there, so they're just doing some Chinese guys, and that may have something to do with the television deal that they've contracted to have X amount of shows per year. I'm not sure. But when they told me what had happened and they couldn't get us in, they just said, well, we'll let you know as soon as we can. But who's to know? Like, airfare is going to be 3 times the amount. We don't know what's going to happen after that.
Yeah.
I don't know. But the concern over there in China for me when I first got there was there was no real commissions. They were very unfamiliar with rules and regulations. So certainly for the first few years, I've been fighting over there with another referee from here, just trying to educate judges, trying to educate the doctors on what we were concerned about, things like that, just trying to get them up to speed. Really going hard at weigh-ins. If guys didn't make weight, I was really stringent on, no, you need to make weight. You signed a contract.
Of course.
They didn't have those sort of things over there, so they sort of started to step those up. Hopefully they're still doing it while I'm not there. I'll be very disappointed if I go back and they've gone, you're right, you can fight.
Yeah. And so obviously you're communicating with them in English, like you don't speak Cantonian or Chinese.
No, I have a few words, but not enough. The whole show's in Mandarin.
Oh, okay.
But they don't want us to. They want us to speak in English. They want me to say, "Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's fight." There's enough. You've travelled around the world. I've travelled around the world. It doesn't matter where you go. We can always find a way to communicate and get things.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
There's always a way. But I have had interesting incidents. I remember one. Should I go off and tell you this story, or should I stick?
Yeah. Go ahead.
So I remember I was doing. This was a UFC, and it was actually in Korea the first time. I've done a couple of UFCs in Korea. I did a show in there, and so we had a Colombian guy. I think it was Colombian guy fighting a Chinese guy with an Australian referee. He doesn't really speak English. He speaks Australian. And the doctor was Korean.
Okay.
So I saw this guy pick him up, slam him to the ground, and I saw his arm kind of go a weird way. And I thought, that's snapped. He's done something to his arm there. And I kind of was, and he didn't react. He kind of just covered up on the ground. And the Colombian guy's hitting. And I just stopped the fight. And I could hear the commentators going, what did he stop the fight for? What's he done? Oh, no, what's the referee done? Yeah. And I'm sitting there going, oh, no, please have a broken arm. Please have a broken arm. And I called the doctor in, the Korean guy, and I said, I think he's broken his arm. And the Korean doctor didn't have a clue what I was talking about, so he just grabs this guy's arm and pulls it, and he screams. The guy screams. I go, yes, he's got a broken arm. As it turns out, he did break his arm. They did the replay back, and they went, shit, he got it right. But if I had got it wrong, I completely wrecked it. So there's a language issue there. In actual fact, I had one in the last UFC in Korea, which was just a couple of months ago, where I stopped the fight for an illegal fence grab, and he was holding and striking. Yeah. And I separated him, and I tried to explain to this Korean guy what was going on. And he didn't quite understand, so I called the interpreter up, who got it wrong as well. And in the end, I just went, I'm just going to take a point at the end of the round anyway. I want to restart this fight. The guy who just wanted to get fighting, he had enough rest. No, let's get it going. So, and under the rules, you don't have to take the point there and then. You can take the point at the end of the round. Yeah. So I indicated, as when I stopped the fight, I'm taking a point. I did make my indication. I made sure everyone heard it. And I'm trying to explain to this guy who, for some reason, didn't understand what I was doing, that I'm going to take a point. I should have probably just stopped and walked him around, but I just went, I'm going to restart the fight. As soon as the round ended, I went and took a point from everyone like that. But you have those problems, those communication problems.
And I remember one, go ahead.
That's it, no.
Okay. I remember one thing about you told me, and I saw it actually. You worked with some events, and they told you to cover your tattoos, yeah?
Oh, yes.
What's it all about? What was it like? Why?
This is the show that I work for in China, the permanent one. Yeah, so It's something to do with the government-owned TV station. they have some really weird rules over there. We should talk about this because when we first went over there, the only rule they had differently was there was no elbows to the head on the ground. Okay, if that's what you want. We couldn't argue anymore, couldn't get it through, so we went for it. As it went on, I think more sponsors got involved. It was on TV. It was getting more and more popular. They didn't like the blood. It's an MMA fight. There's going to be blood. So now, as I go into the cage, I have to have a towel in my pocket. And in the rules meeting, I have to let everybody know, if you've got a cut and it's running down your face or wherever it is, I will call time. I will try to stop the bleeding. If it continues to bleed, even if it's not a cut worth stopping the fight for, the fight is over.
Oh.
So if you're a bleeder, if you're a Diego Sanchez, you just do this. Bleed. There's nothing wrong with him. He's just got scar.
Yeah.
So a few weeks after that, they decided that they shouldn't have. I think it was just a bad look for the TV, the blood, and then they didn't like the tattoos on the fighters. Very few of the Chinese guys have tattoos, but a lot of the Russians or the foreigners were covered in tattoos. So they started to make them wear tape around their wrists or wherever they were. But some guys have got them everywhere.
Yeah, of course.
So a couple of guys then started putting makeup over their tattoos, and I went, you can't do that. That's an illegal substance. It was just. Yeah. But then they allowed them to wear a rash guard, and I said, well, that's unfair as well. You can't have one guy in a full rash guard, and the other. And then they went, and while we're on the subject, you've got tattoos, you have to now wear bandages. So I had to start wearing this band. I'm like, nobody's looking at me. I'm just the referee. So I couldn't complain. I couldn't argue my point. That was just what they're fighting on.
Yeah.
Not real MMA. If you're taking your tattoos and blood, you've just lost 70% of your competitors.
Yeah, exactly. I know if you remember ACA fighter Daniel Toledo from Spain.
Oh yeah.
He's like all covered in tattoos, so that will be a huge problem. Okay, so we got more than 40 minutes, and I think I just asked you everything I wanted to ask you, and I think we're gonna do that way. I'm gonna collect some questions from our viewers, and I hope we're gonna, and I'm sure we're gonna speak again. We're gonna talk again, and I will ask you those questions because for me, you're a guy from Australia, so from the other side of the globe. So everything what's going on down there in that part of the world is interesting for us, So I really like to thank you for this conversation, and I hope you're getting well, and we're gonna see someday, in work. So thank you very much, Greg.
And good to catch up with you too, man. Hopefully we do catch up in real time again.
Yep. So thank you and take care.
All right, mate. Thank you. Take care.
Na kolejny odcinek zaprasza lektornia.com.